Merci, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're big on electricity. Can you tell us about your project with Aecon?
Well, energy, to me, we got into energy by accident. I would say not by accident, but by necessity. It is, to me, a project that was very personal to us, to Samba, to Aecon, and to myself. It was a necessity to respond to a need that I think is the heartbeat of our economy and the future of our continent. We're driven by the fact that we want the same thing we've seen traveling around the world in other countries to our countries in Africa. We want our children to have access to electricity, to be able to study at night. We want our children in Africa to be able to compete with the young Charles or the young Christophe in France or in the United States tomorrow to move our countries forward. We want our same farmers to have access to energy so they can be more productive and feed our own selves. You know, we want to build our industries so we can be competitive, to create jobs and opportunities to the continent. And for that, it will take mixed energy. It will take not only the work of government, but also the work of the private sector, which we are, but also the work of Africans abroad who are coming home to contribute in the process of what I call today the development of the continent, but also the reconstruction, the new narrative that we will tell about the story of our continent. And this is beyond personal. It is a mission. It is a duty to me that we came together, bring our forces. Aecon is an entertainer, a singer, a producer. Samba is the one who was more into the business of development in a continent. I am more into grassroots community organizing and, you know, social entrepreneur. But when we bring our forces, we were able to move so many different parts of our continent in the villages in 18 countries to bring energy. But I think in the process, our lives were transformed in a sense that when we go to places like Maradi in Niger, and we electrify those villages, and we see women at night are able to sell their goods a little longer than before. With their mangoes or their fruits that they're selling, they can send their children to school, they can feed their families, they can be proud of what they contribute in their communities. Their communities are a little safer at night. Those postes de santé outside of Cotonou that we electrified in Guinea, Conakry, and etc. in those villages, where women now can go to the hospital at night when there's crises or things going on in the community. They can react because there's more lights, there's safety, there's security. And the young farmer in Mali and etc. are able to have access to water because of the solar lights that we're putting in the mini-grid systems. This is transformational to us.
Can you just, in a nutshell, explain what the project is?
Well, the project is solar energy project. We have 365 days of sun in Africa. We thought that it was underutilized. In Europe, it wasn't a big deal. In America, solar wasn't a big deal because we can understand because of the nature of weather. You know, we have six months in America. Sometimes we don't have enough sun because of the winter. And Africa is 365 days. We saw that first it's clean, it's reliable, but it's cheaper. That's why we tempted the way to create the project, to move the project towards solar energy. And in the solar energy project, we have 3 different systems. The street light systems, which is electrifying the streets, the street lights you see from airports to the cities to the villages. And that one you do with contracts with the government who fund them. and we pre-finance them because we have a $1 billion line of credit that's be financing that part of the project. Then we have the home systems. For any houses in the villages off grid, they can use that. You can turn a couple of lights, electricity, you can have the fans, you can have, you know, the little refrigerator and etc. It depends how much you want to spend. And the third and last one is the mini-grid system, where you can connect the small businesses, the hospitals, the mosque, you know, the community centers and etc. That allows the whole small village to have access directly to the mini-grid system, but also energy.
You're also involved into farming. Can you tell us what's your take on agribusiness and what it is that you do?
Well, agribusiness, it's like the same thing that moved me into Acorn Lighting Africa kind of moved me. I saw a need to get involved in agriculture because I don't believe any country or any continent can be, you know, developed without self-sufficiency of agriculture. We have a young population, the youngest in the world today. We have the sun, we have a flat land, 60% of the world's edible land, but we only produce 7% of the world's food. We cannot feed ourselves. Most of the things that we eat in Africa are transported from overseas, exported in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and etc. for the rice, in Ukraine, in the oil, vegetables here in Morocco. To me, the question that I asked myself was, what can be done to close the gap? And I always believe that the best way to protest, to be an activist, is to take actions. In the sense of, how can we, talking to myself now, take a step further instead of just criticizing and blaming who didn't do the work? In my level, what can I do to make sure my house, personally, I'm self-sufficient first? And then my friends are self-sufficient, and then my community is self-sufficient. So then I invested in farming. I said it's time to buy a land, and it's time to farm. I'm a social entrepreneur. I identify where the issues are, and I want the business that I do affect the lives of people, because that's what moves me. I'm attached to Africa. I am attached to the needed change of my continent. And for that, I don't wait for no one to do it in my place. I don't look for government or private sector. They all have their, I think, enough in their plate. But for me, as the returning Senegalese who lived in the US for 19, 20 years, I have an obligation also to contribute in the development of my country and my continent. And this, I don't wait. I just get dirty in the ground and to make things happen. And I think that's what moved me in the agriculture sector, and it's wonderful because it changed my life in the process. Now I love farming. It's allowing me to give access, direct jobs to young people who thought they will never be a farmer, young lawyers, young accountants, young people who, when they saw me leaving the United States, Washington, D.C., where I could stay and enjoy life, and then I come to Senegal in the farms, getting dirty with them, and then not telling them go to farm, but farming with them. I think it gives a little inspiration. I hope that it's possible to make it in our own home. It's possible to drive the change we want to see in our own communities. And I can't be more proud of what my team and I are doing to show that it's possible.
How many jobs have you created?
More than 100 young people, you know. And then we have small hotels that are attached to the farm with restaurants in the tourism industry, where in our restaurants, when you go to each hotel, it's from farm to table. And in the farm, I created what we call the farm share, Jevzone Farm Share, which means anybody from the diaspora can invest in farming from where they are with only $200 minimum investment and 10% guarantee every harvest time, every 3 or 4 month investing. For example, right now we have pepper, we have tomato, we have cabbage, and etc. So every time we harvest, you have 10% in your investment. And when we launch it,
You pay in peppers and.
Yeah, we do all of that. All
So
vegetables.
You send all the vegetables are part of your returns to your investors, or you pay
To
them?
investors, I know I give them 10% guarantee to their initial investment.
Money, you mean? You
Yes.
don't give 10% of the harvest.
No, I give them 10% to them of their money. Then it will be too much. Because I have the farmers are also entrepreneurs. I want them to make sure that they make money. When they come to the farm, I tell all of them, you all are entrepreneurs. Nobody's an employee here. You tell me what you need, I invest. We work together, we make the money, and on top of profit, we all split it. And this gives them ownership.
You're trying to change the dynamic.
The narrative.
The narrative, but the dynamic.
Of course, that is true.
What is the vision? What is the ambition?
That is the vision. The vision is the narrative to be changed. In the long run, the vision is I want my people to not wait for anyone to feed them. Whoever feeds you control your destiny. And for too long, Africa waits for someone else to come and feed it. Africa waits for somebody else to change our own destiny. In that we blame so many people, and there is a lot to be blamed. But I think we've come to a point now that there is a new generation of young Africans who, just like you, been to the top schools in the world, have traveled the world, have understood the world, can talk and communicate to the world. What I will say is that new Africa is grown now. The baby is grown and can walk and run by itself. In Europe, where you're from, after the war, after the Second War, this is not long ago, this is the late 40s, beginning of the 50s, we were better off in the 60s when we left independence than you were. You had no energy, sometimes no running water, no roads, everything was destroyed. But it took young Europeans, with the help of the German Marshall Fund, the Americans, to give you a little push to keep the train moving forward. But the difference between you in Europe and us is that Europe graduated from aid. Europe decided at one point that we don't need America anymore. We can do it on our own. That's what we call will, la volonté. Okay? And then they drive their own change. They reconstructed Europe. Us in Africa, since independence and now, we refuse to graduate from aid. We continue to beg for help. We continue to ask for someone else to come in our place, develop for our countries. We blame others for where we are. Again, there is people to be blamed, but we shouldn't stop there. To me, it is time that we graduate from aid. It is time that we utilize our natural resources and the benefit of our own people. How can you explain 30% of wealth in the world is in Africa in natural resources, but yet we call one of the poorest continents in the world, or the poorest? It is unacceptable. I don't accept it. We are not poor. We have poor leadership. We don't have, in many of our countries, the right leaders who work to serve the people for the benefit of the people. And that's what I look for, and that's what I work for, and that's what I think our generation needs. Transformational leaders. The leaders such as Paul Kagame's, who will drive the change that their countries need, where you get everyone involved to one destiny, is to uplift the nation. And I think the time is there now, because Rwanda is, before I used to give examples of Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, the Emirates, and other countries. Today I'm proud to give examples of a country, a small country, with not enough natural resources or almost no natural resources. A country that came out of atrocity just a few years ago, lost more than 1 million people, almost 1 million people in a disastrous, unthinkable event. Or today, in less than 30 years, in less than 20 years, is being an example of nation building in our own continent. We are very proud of what Rwanda is doing. And that should tell us it's all about the will. And in that, I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful to the future of Africa because we're here, the new generation, and we are conscious about what's laid in our shoulders and what needs to be done. That's why I left the United States and come home to do my part, not to blame anyone, but me and what I should be doing every day to make that change. Morocco did it. Look at what Morocco are able to do. Morocco is able to be self-sufficient in electricity. They don't need a new aid. What they've built in the infrastructure, the leadership in this country is unbelievable what you see in Morocco in less than 30 years. If Morocco did it, we should be able to do it. Senegal have more than natural resources than Morocco.
So we're talking 30 years?
It should be less than 30 years.
Okay, you're on. Give us the time frame.
The time frame is the fierce urgency of now. I want it yesterday. I don't want it tomorrow or after tomorrow. I want the children of my country to have access to energy so they can compete with the young Americans in a few years or tomorrow. I want that now. I want the people who are dying in our small hospital because a small, hospital bill of 5,000 francs, 10 euros, to stop. I want those women who are surrounded by 5, 6 babies and not be able to feed them for $1 a day to stop. I want to change that. I want for our countries to be the new El Dorado of the world, and it is. Everyone understands that Africa is the new El Dorado. The growth is in Africa. Opportunities are in Africa. That's why you have the Chinese in there. The United States is in there. Europeans are in there. The Turks is in there. Even Russia is coming to Africa. Japan and China are there. Everyone understands that the El Dorado of the world today is in Africa, but Africans. Yet we have millions of young people dying in the ocean here in the Mediterranean, trying to cross to look for an opportunity in Europe. That is what's called failed leadership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.